Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 117, titled NHL Draft Analytics and Scouting from the Couch. Oh yeah, we got Will Scouch of Scouching shortly on the program. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks Editor-in-Chief and my new boss, Nick Volano. Streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Nick, we got lots of news, lots of hockey. Also, we got Tyler Kelly on a little bit later. But, hey, we're on live air. Let me get our next guest because he's got a mock draft coming up shortly around 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Talk to everybody.
No, I mean, This is honestly, I'm not even set up because the breaking news like 30 seconds ago is that Shea Weber's career might be over. So I've been reading on this. Nashville might face a $4.9 million cap recapture until 2026. So they're already kind of in a weird way with the cap, and they have people to sign, and they might trade Philip Forsberg, and they might have to trade, but who knows? And this just came out. I want to give proper credit to the first person to. Oh, well, that's what happens when things minimize for no reason. I know Elliot Freeman wrote an article about it, but the proper credit goes to Renaud Lavoie, who's had a lot of Canadians connections. So Canadians are keeping Shea Weber unprotected. But I do want to talk about our guest first. We're talking. This might be one of the most stacked Let's Go Devils podcasts. We had to give you extra time. We had to come on early. I'm not even on the Facebook sharing yet because I'm just trying to get this all put together. But Zach Parise gets unceremoniously cut. We will talk about that after we have Will Scouch of Scouching, one of the most popular YouTube channels when it comes to draft analytics and breaking down these draft prospects. I had to have him on. One of the friends of the podcast, Al Shavansi, has come on, and he actually shared this guy's video on Owen Power and basically eviscerates him. I don't want to speak for him, so he'll come on. He'll explain the Owen Power video. I was watching his Brant Clark and his Luke Hughes videos today to try to get a comparison. He goes in and out of every single draft, the prospects before and how the draft goes after. I'm excited to talk. Sam, it's going to be a crazy podcast. This is going to be wild.
It's going to be absolutely wild. The Shea Weber thing going on, and now our guest will be on in about a couple seconds here. But let me just make a couple adjustments. He is the founder of Scouching. His name is Will Scouch. You can find him on Twitter at Scouching. You're on, Will. You're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing okay, guys. How are you all?
We're doing great. I'm so excited to have you on right now. I've been deep diving your YouTube. I saw your breakdown of the Devils 2020 and 2019 drafts. You're kind of even over, which a lot of people were about those drafts, and been diving into some of these videos of the current prospects. So I really want to thank you for coming on, first of all.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm just trying to gather my thoughts because the Shea Weber thing kind of threw me for a loop and it kind of blew up my rundown. But I do want to talk NHL draft. That's what I'm most looking to get done right now. I know that the big thing you did this week was the Owen Power video. You broke down the consensus number one overall pick in the 2021 NHL draft, but it's consensus in a weird way because it's not like Lafreniere, it's not like Jack Hughes, it's not like some of these other players where it's like it's only consensus because it feels like people keep saying it, and he doesn't seem like the best player in the draft. It just seems like people just keep saying he is. And you kind of broke that down this week. Kind of go over what you saw in the University of Michigan defenseman.
Yeah, so he was a very, very, very interesting one for me. I had a weird feeling about him after watching him last year. And it did not take very long for me this year to realize that, he probably wouldn't be the guy that I'd take at first overall, but I do think he's a legitimate, top 10 guy. I think he's at 7 on my list most recently. And, the things that, the issue that I think is there, the biggest sort of glaring issue is that, like you said, there's a big mismatch between, to me, what I'm seeing with my eyeballs and what's coming out in the data and what people are saying about him. And when you read the things that people write about him and how valuable he'd be at number 1, the explanations aren't particularly glowing. And I think there is a lot of risk at that pick. I think that since it's the Buffalo Sabres picking at that pick, they kind of need someone who can very clearly help turn that ship around. And with Owen Power, I just see a lot of warning signs that the wrong NHL team is going to think that he's something that he isn't and put him in the NHL way too quick. And I see a lot of discomfort in him. And I think that more time in college is kind of necessary. But again, I don't want to come off sounding like I don't like him as a player. I think he's a really, really interesting defenseman with a lot of potential. But there's a ways to go, I think, before you unlock that potential.
So if he falls to 4 and the Devils are picking, is he not your lockdown pick? Are you still like, well, it depends on who's on the board with Power?
In a sense, yeah. I think if I'm New Jersey, I mean, he's on that list. I think at that slot. If I'm at 4, I mean, it depends on what you're looking at. But the guy that I would really like that might be available at 4 would be William Eklund. Obviously there's the easy New Jersey connection you can make that he was a line mate of Alexander Holtz, but I think it goes beyond just saying, oh, they're line mates, therefore they'd be a good pair. I think that William Eklund, yes, the Devils have drafted a lot of skilled offensive forwards recently, but I still think that you can never have too many of those, and I think that the offense that William Eklund brings is real intense offensive play that's projectable. He doesn't have a lot of holes in his game, I would say, outside of the fact that he's not the biggest guy and not the strongest guy. But that, to me, I think he has more than enough to overcome those shortcomings. So he'd be the target that I think could be available there. Another name that, if you want a forward, that I might think about is Kent Johnson. But it would be very interesting if Owen Power is not the guy at number 1. It'd be very interesting to see if he did end up slipping to 4, because I think he is part of that discussion, just maybe not the guy that I would push the hardest for.
All right, I didn't bring this up before, but you mentioned it, so I have to ask about Kent Johnson because I'm so intrigued by this player, but his value is legitimately all over the place. He could be, I've seen people say that he could legitimately be the best player in this draft, but there's like massive red flags that people are kind of on the fence about. Can you tell me what I should think about Kent Johnson?
It's kind of funny. I'm kind of in the same boat on both sides. I think Kent Johnson is one of the players in this year's top 10 or 12 that there's a group of them, I think, that have a very, very, very wide range of possibilities in their career. I think there's a chance that he becomes a really good AHL scorer that kind of is one of those guys that might struggle to score at 5-on-5 in the NHL. The data I tracked on him showed pretty clearly that he was a guy who struggled at 5-on-5 to produce points, but I think that did kind of improve a little bit over the course of the year once he got a little bit more comfortable with what he could get away with. For him, I think the key to his development is going to be finding a balance between using the gifted brain and hands that he's got in conjunction while also balancing that with just going out and playing. He's a guy who, to me, really just overplayed the game a lot, hung onto the puck for way too long, trying to look for a play that just never showed up. And I applaud him for having the patience and the skill to get into those situations. And a lot of the things that I did track on him in terms of transitions and such were really interesting and solid. But I do, if I'm trying to bring him along as a player, it's like, look, I know you're capable of all of these really, really high-end, high creativity things, but it's not quite, I don't think right now it's quite enough to, dominate an NHL game. And I think that if you're not dominant playing the way that he does in the NHL, you're going to have trouble. So I think that's something that was improving, though. I will grant that as well. I think Ken Johnson is another player, though, that in terms of as an offensive point producer, could end up one of the most productive players coming out of this draft for sure. I don't think that's too outlandish. But there is risk, I think, and a lot of that comes down to how he's developed, I think.
So, we mentioned Power. I really think one of those three teams are going to take him. I don't think he's going to be available there. There's too much of the traditional hype that these teams don't want to face the criticism that would come of them not taking Power and him being the best player in the draft. So I don't, maybe Buffalo takes Beniers or someone else, but I don't think he's going to be there at 4. The two players that keep coming up for the Devils, ironically, are two players with brothers who play for the team. It's Graham Clark, it's Brandt Clark, brothers Graham, and it's Luke Hughes. What is your thoughts of the Luke Hughes and Brandt Clark debate?
Well, if I had to pick one, Luke Hughes would probably be the guy. He's a guy who has almost a full year of development or a full season of development that he has to go before he really catches up with a lot of these guys. I agree with you. Owen Power, I would be very, 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 very surprised if he was there at 4. I know I'm not the only person who has a bit of concerns about him, but I just get the feeling that even getting to 4 is a long shot. So for Hughes, that's a guy who I think brings a lot of really, really high-end offensive traits. I look at who the Devils have drafted in the last few years to play defense, and Ty Smith is, I think, probably the only one that I think really projects as an impact NHL defenseman in terms of an offensive sense. With Luke Hughes, I think you would add another one, and I think with Luke Hughes, you'd add, at the very worst, another power play weapon, a really good transition defender. I have questions about how he plays defensively, but he has all the tools, I think, that are necessary to sort of patch the holes defensively that he does, in my opinion, have. So he would be the guy that I'd go for. I think with Brandt Clark, I think it's going to really depend on the team looking at him. I think that, he had some trouble stringing passes together through the neutral zone. He had some trouble moving pucks up the ice with control. But once the puck is in the offensive zone and he gets it on his stick, it's kind of lights out. He's able to do pretty much whatever you need him to do, which is fine. But the skating is a bit of an issue. You've got an offensive-leaning defenseman who doesn't have the traditional fundamentals that typical NHL offensive defensemen have. Whereas with Luke Hughes, with the youth that he has and the runway that you have to develop him with, and the fact that he does have these strong fundamentals already and a really good sense of offensive vision, I think, when he's really dialed into the game. But I think Luke Hughes is the guy, but I think he's another one where it's going to come down to sort of developing him properly and trying to get him kind of similar to Ken Johnson, playing a bit more of that, team unit style of play and utilizing line mates a lot more than he does. He kind of tries to do a lot on his own, and sometimes that's his own detriment, and I feel like that's not going to get easier. But, you give him a year or two at Michigan, and I think you're going to end up with a really, really good, at the very worst, top 4 defenseman.
Yeah, and that seems to be the consensus, right? Is that these defensemen are all really good, but need a lot of development, right? Is that kind of what I'm reading? Basically.
I think that's the thing with defensemen in general, is that when they're young, they can have some gaps in their game. And I think that's perfectly legitimate. I look at Luke Hughes, and there are holes in his game for sure, but I look at the fundamentals that he's got and think, all right, a lot of it might be mental. Just the way he's approaching the game and how he thinks of his own role on a unit, I think, is not super projectable. But if he could work through that, and mature a little bit, I think, and I guess would be the word, he would be an interesting option. The other guys, Simon Edvinsson, I'm not super concerned about in terms of becoming an NHL player, whereas with Power and Clark, I look at those guys and see things that might hold them back from being an impact player because they have some fundamental things they need to work on, whereas with Hughes, the fundamentals are there. With Edvinsson, a lot of the fundamentals are there. It's just a lot of mental things they kind of need to work through in order to hit that ceiling. So much depends on what you think you can get out of these guys. But yeah, that definitely sort of rings true for a lot of these defensemen, because young defensemen are really hard to project.
Yeah, obviously, I'm actually writing an article for one of our fan-sided pages on the worst first-round picks for each team, and there's just a lot of defensemen because they think it's going to be one thing and another thing happens, and somebody like Mike Green ends up being the best defenseman in the first round. I think he got taken 30th. So yeah, you're exactly right. It's very, very hard to project these defensemen. So let's not talk about defensemen anymore. I know the Devils are probably going to take a defenseman. They're probably, but there are some juicy forwards in this draft that I feel like aren't getting the even Beniers, I feel like doesn't get the love he deserves because the defensemen are just kind of the shiny new toys in this draft. You got William Eklund, you have Kent Johnson, who we spoke about before, and you have Dylan Guenther. Do you think the Devils consider any of those forwards or maybe another forward with those picks? I know Mason McTavish has been jumping up draft boards as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Devils are in a weird spot. This is a weird draft where I think it's almost arguably better to pick 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th overall and sort of let the teams at 3, 4, 5, 6 just pick the guys they want because I see it as so even. But if I'm at 4 and I'm the Devils, I mean, I think there's 5 players that are separating themselves as potentially the most impactful NHL players down the road. And I think that if you want one of those 5, in my view, you hope that William Eklund is available at 4 if you want a forward. And when I think about the Devils, I mean, I get the feeling that he would be a nice fit and just add more offensive firepower. He's just a great player. And I don't think you can have too many really, really good players. Like when I look at him play, there's a bit of that Nikolai Ehlers type of play where there's a lot of possession, there's a lot of evasion, there's a lot of skill, there's a lot of dual threat offense. He can shoot, he can pass. I don't think he's going to be an NHL scoring leader one day. I don't think he's a guy that can carry his own line. But I do think that if you put him with a good center, with a good mobile center who can work off of him, or maybe a physical guy who has some skill that can sort of clear some space for him, you could easily end up with a player that scores a lot of points. And I don't think you can have too many of those. And like we've been saying, the defensemen have question marks. And you mentioned Ken Johnson. I think at 4, especially if a guy like William Eklund is on the board, I might be a bit tough to convince on that. Dylan Guenther, same thing goes there. But both of those guys, Johnson and Guenther, I think are easily projectable as, at the very worst, second line scoring offensive guys. And those are good complementary pieces to add. And when you compare that to the sort of question marks on defense that are available in the draft, I mean, I think it's a legitimate discussion to have. And that's kind of the rub about being in the slot that New Jersey's in. It's a tough spot. You have to pick something, and they're going to have a lot of points. I don't think there's a ton of bad decisions you could make because they're just so even in this range. But I do think, I mean, of the names that we've been talking about, if William Eklund is available at 4 for the New Jersey Devils, that's the guy that I'd be beating the table for.
Yeah, and Eklund played with Holtz, so there's another connection. It's not, it's not like, obviously you want to make Jack happy, but if you think that Eklund is 2 steps above Luke right now, I know Luke is young, but it's not like you don't have a connection and you're not making your 7th overall pick from last year happy. There's definitely something there and already built-in chemistry.
I agree. I mean, I think with Luke, that's the name that I think if you want to talk about players that are in the same tier potentially as a guy like Eklund, he would be on the list. And that it would really depend on how the Devils felt about him when they interviewed him and interviewed the coaches and talked about him. Like a lot of the fit sort of factors come in there. But yeah, I mean, those are the guys that I think would be on the short list in that range for sure.
So let's skip ahead. Devils have, I guess it's technically the 29th pick, but it's really the 28th pick because Arizona's forfeiting their pick. But the way NHL did this was very strange. But anyway, they have the 28th player in this draft that they're going to take. And I've been looking, and the end of the first round could go so many different ways. Last year was kind of an outlier where it seemed like outside of basically the Devils picking Mukamadulin and the Columbus pick, you at least knew the types of players that were going to go in the first round. This year, anything could really happen at the end of the first round of this draft. Are there any players that you think might be available 28 that you really like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think in this year's draft, you're going to end up with a lot of players that I have ranked between, I'd say, 13 and 20 that slip to that range. I think Matthew Coronado is a guy who would be a great New Jersey Devil. You know, he can play center, but he's technically a winger. But there's a lot of hard work there that he brings to the table. He earns everything he gets. He's got a great shot. He works hard. You know, I think if his skating can improve, which it should while he's at Harvard, there could be really an interesting middle six kind of guy there. If you draft a William Eklund at 4, you might think about maybe changing gears and going for a defenseman. I think you're going to have a choice of multiple defensemen that I'd be very interested in. You know, if you're the New Jersey Devils and you like the sort of Ty Smith angle of defensemen to sort of offset the Mukamadulins and the Daniel Musuels and the other bigger defensemen that they've drafted and acquired, like Kevin Ball or Nikita Okhotiuk, someone like an Olin Zellweger at 28 might also make a lot of sense. He's 5'9", 5'10"-ish, but similar to Luke Hughes, extremely young. I think there's a ton of talent there to extract, and you know, I'm a huge fan of him, and maybe you might even be able to get him in with a later pick, but he's a guy where I'd be pushing for him as well. I mean, I could go down a whole bunch of players here. I mean, if you want a bigger defenseman up that Mukamadulin previous angle of a bigger, sort of rangier defenseman, guys like Daniil Chayka, I think are a little bit undervalued at this point. People are really writing off that guy, and I think there's more to like than what's been alluded to there, and he might be available in that range. Maybe not, because he's big and can skate, and, you know, a team might jump on that at, say, 20th overall. A Scott Morrow in a New Jersey Devils uniform would look really good too. Big prep school guy who has tons and tons of skill and really aggressive defenseman in terms of an offensive sense, and I like him a lot. I guess what I'm saying is at 28, there's going to be, I think, at least a couple of choices that you could make that, you know, even if it is another, let's say it's William Eklund at 4, let's say you're available to choose someone like Logan Stankoven, who's another sort of small, skilled winger. I think Logan Stankoven is so good that if he's available at 28, just go, all right, let's pick him and worry about it later. And if we have too many good wingers, that's a good problem to have. We're putting too many pucks in the net. Oh, boo-hoo. So I think that that's another option, is you just wait for someone who's, in my opinion, very good to slip, because I think that those are going to happen just by virtue of how insane this year is. Because like you said, I'm fully expecting NHL teams to pick guys that I might not even have ranked as high as, you know, however high you want to play pretend, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and this draft is weird because of the lack of scouting, and because the teams haven't been able to travel, and you know, all the things that come with, you know, a pandemic and such. We got to let you go in a sec, but I do want to ask. I've been asking all of the draft people, and I still don't know how to say his name, so I'm going to be terrible with this. Otu Rade? Help me as well.
Yes. Atu Ratu.
Oh, Atu Ratu. The Devils have draft capital. He was once considered the best in this draft, and he's falling to like the 20-ish range. Would you trade up to get him if you're the Devils? Like, this is somebody who has star potential still.
I think it depends on how far you would need to trade up, and it's really hard for me to say where he's going to go in the draft. I mean, I've spoken to some people who think that some NHL teams don't have him in their first round, and I think that's insane to me. But if that's the case, you know, all it takes for a guy to slip is a team to just have him at number 2, the next team to have him at number 2, the next team to have him at number 2, and next thing you know, he's available at 25. You know, if it costs you a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick to move up a couple of slots because you think the team ahead of you is going to pick him, I think it's worthwhile if you're starting from a starting point of 28, and I'm usually not a fan of trading up. But I think with Atu Ratu, the big thing with him is that you need to tweak his thinking. I think he puts an extreme amount of pressure on himself to perform, and when he doesn't have it, which he hasn't had for, I think, 2 years now, he kind of doubts himself, it seems, and he kind of gets in his own head, and there's a lot of question marks, I think, and I've seen him do some stuff in the Liga this year that's both really, 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 really impressive against men, but I've also seen him do some stuff where it's like you scored a bunch of goals when you were 15 years old, but I just saw you shoot a puck over the net from about 5 feet out. Like, something is funky here. And so when I look at that, I go, okay, his transition efficiency was extremely high when I tracked him, especially for a guy playing in men's hockey. I like his skill. I like his speed. I like the package of size and skill that he's got. And when I watched him in junior level hockey, like if he was playing in the WHL this year, I feel like he would have absolutely torn that league to pieces, because when I watched him in Finnish junior hockey, he had a bit more space to play with, but he really used it really, really well. And he was dominant at that level. In the first game, I don't like looking at a player and saying, well, I saw them in this one game and they were this good. I mean, the first game after playing in junior back in the Liga, he was one of the best players on the ice, bar none. And I think I'd be very surprised to see him at 28, but at the same time, you never know. And I feel like he could be, it's possible, but I think it's unlikely. I still believe in him. I'm not the kind of person who's just, he's still at 12 on my list. I think there's a really good player there, just it's locked in behind sort of he's in a prison of his own expectations, kind of. And I think if you can unlock that and bring him along and sort of give him a reset, you could have a really, really good pickup, especially if it's, say, the Devils at 28. That'd be a no-brainer sort of buy low scenario for me.
I love the player. The more research I do on, the more I fall in love with him, because I feel like he can fix his problems. Mental is, and you get him on a team like the Devils where everybody's in the 20 to 25 range when he eventually gets here, or 26 range. So there's a bunch of kids who have those same thoughts and those same insecurities. I think that would help him out. I think the Devils are actually probably one of the more perfect teams, because not a lot of media. The team is very young, and he could kind of find friends here because there's a couple really good Swedes, and Nico Hischier is obviously Swiss, so it's kind of in that realm of realm of European player. I feel like the Devils are the best fit for him.
I mean, maybe. We'll see. I mean, I'm keeping he goes. I think, there might be teams that think, oh, he's never going to regain the offense, so we may as well just turn him into a possession sort of two-way guy. But I think there's to work with. Even if it's the Devils at 28, he ends up, as you're saying, number 3 center behind Hischier and Hughes. I think you could do a heck of a lot worse, for sure.
No, absolutely. Will Scouch, you got to get prepared for your own live thing. You're going on live at 9:30, correct?
I am 1 hour from right this second.
Okay, we get off at 9:30. Leave the Let's Go Devils podcast. Go check out Scouching on YouTube. What else you got coming up? I know you also do some stuff for McKean's. You got any good articles or videos coming up that our fans will be interested in?
Yeah, so you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's going to be 2 public live streams next week before the draft, and then the live streams throughout the entire draft as well, so you can tune in for those. My writings on McKean's, you can find all of the written versions of my video reports up there, accessible for all subscribers. Between now and then, I'm putting out a video, just putting up my final ranking list, just get it out of the way before the draft. So that should be coming in the next few days. And yeah, there's going to be a bit more coming after the draft, but a lot of live stuff between now and next Saturday evening, I think.
Wonderful. Lots of live stuff. We love live. We're live here. Let's Go Devils podcast. Scouching goes live. Make sure, go to YouTube. They're great. I honestly, I fell into a hole. I didn't get a lot of work done because I was watching the Scouching rankings and watching old Scouching rankings to see how they compare to now. Will Scouch, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today.
Oh, anytime. Thank you very much for having me.
That is Will Scouch, founder of Scouching. You can find him on Twitter at Scouching or Scouching.ca.
Listen, Sam.
Good stuff.
I love that
I'm
name.
all about Eklund.
Scouching?
I'm all about Eklund right now.
Oh, man. That one surprised me that he was all in on Eklund. Oh, man. We talk to these people and they have such different thoughts because there's just no scouting this year. And there's no Like last year, it was Lafreniere, and everybody seemed to love Marco Rossi. And then there was a bunch of players that fit into like certain roles. Like Holtz was the scorer, and Lucas Raymond was the all-around really good player. Draymond Drysdale was the best defenseman. And Jake Sanderson was the other kind of defenseman. Like everybody fit into a role. Nobody fits into anything this year. Everything is upside this year. There's no it's all about predicting what they're going to be, not going based off what they are. And that's bringing on a different opinion every time. I mean, we talked to Josh Bell, and he was first overall. And we didn't end up talking about this with Will, but Will's number one overall, I believe, is Ben Years is his best player. He's going to come out with his final rankings next week, he said. That's definitely a must-watch. I mean, it's free. Go on YouTube, subscribe, hit the subscribe button like you hit the subscribe button for us, and go watch those videos because he's got this is what I love. Because, Sam, I'm going to break down a lot of these prospects. I'm going to kind of – next week is my deep dive into end of first, second, third round players, the type players that the Devils can get. But I can't show a lot of videos. But he's breaking down these videos. He's like highlighting what they're doing. He's like, look at what he did on this play. That's not the correct thing to do. Look at what he didn't do on this play. And the Owen Power thing – the way he broke down Owen Power will make the Buffalo Sabres themselves scared to death. And it's great work. It's really good work. I'm glad that Alex another friend of the podcast, Alex Chavancy, kind of showed me to him. I knew he existed. It's kind of one of those things that there's so many analysts out there. And I've seen his videos before, but I just never, saw him on Twitter, I guess is what I mean. And once I saw him on Twitter, I was like, let's get him on the pod. Love this guy. This is great. So I'm excited. But Sam, we can't even dwell on the draft because the draft is next week. This week.
Well, do you mind if I interrupt here because I'm seeing some chatter about the draft, what we're doing? I haven't really promoted it that well, just because I'm still getting everybody's schedules together because this is a big draft party live at Taj Lounge 973 across the street from Prudential Center. I know the Devils are doing something inside. We'll be outside. We're going to have a good time. If the weather permits, from what I'm told, we have received a permit from the city of Newark to broadcast outside Taj Lounge 973 with the background. It's just going to be like, when you watch ESPN's College Game Day, it's going to be Let's Go Devils podcast, NHL draft, pick day. I don't know what you would call it. So Taj Lounge 973 across the street from Prudential Center on Edison Place. And find us. Short Sky will be there. The guys from Hockey on Tap will be there. I know Scotty's going to be beamed in from L.A. Nick, we're going to work on your schedule. You're going to be beamed in from Tampa. And also...
I'll be in Georgia, but...
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna miss this event. Yeah.
You can't.
I'm not going to miss the event. I will still... Yeah. I'll play reporter. It's like, when they take the news anchor... and they send him or her out in the field. They're like, oh, look at this. Our anchor's out in the field. How cool is this? That's me. I am the anchor. You're sending me out in the field. I'm gonna be live on location of something random. And we're gonna have a pretty backdrop and we're gonna look good. But
by the way, we don't do fake virtual studio sets here on the Let's Go Devils podcast. Okay? We don't do any of that fake stuff. We don't have a green screen.
This is a real jersey. Look at this.
Yeah. See, we don't do any of that, green. See, it's not like your Zoom call where, your hand disappears or whatever. I'll tell you a reason why.
It's like, oh.
Yeah.
Wait, where'd it go? Oh, here it is.
Yeah. We don't do any of that fake stuff. The reason why? Why spend the extra money? We'll just throw something in the background. Yeah. It's called budget cuts, people. It's not because we're better or anything. We're just why spend the money? Also, we're gonna have some music, DJ, all that kind of stuff at Taj Lounge 97.3. I see people chiming in. Also, Nick, I just want to congratulate you. You've been putting out, you and the crew at pucksandpitchforks.com is putting out a tremendous amount of content because I'll tell you, God's honest truth, today I didn't even know what to talk about. And then I just go on pucksandpitchforks.com and then I got a clue because it made me a little bit knowledgeable. 5 potential trades to look out for, all that stuff. I'm still working on, I'm a little slow writer. I'm still working on my, analysis of what Tad Brown, the new CEO of
I forgot that
Sports Entertainment. Yeah. That just it seemed like years ago, but I want to, I'm thinking the mindset of a CEO, like what he has to do. And he has to win. That's step number 1. Start winning cups, and anything else you add on top of it will be magnified. But yeah, so Thomas in the YouTube Live says first comment. Okay, so not much chatter on YouTube Live, but there's a lot of people on YouTube Live.
Bring them on.
There's a lot of people on YouTube Live.
I'm
Facebook
gonna get them
Live.
talking, Sam. I'm gonna get them talking, Sam.
Okay.
We want to know how.
Yeah. How?
Well, no.
Oh.
Wait. The suspense. Guess who is the odds-on favorite to sign Zach Parise?
Well, the obvious pick would be the Islanders, right?
According to Odds Shark, the Devils are plus 200 to sign their former captain. They are tied for first with the Islanders. The Islanders and the Devils are both plus 200 to sign number 9, Zach Parise.
The only person he's going to recognize is Marty Brodeur in The Office.
And that's fine. That is perfectly fine. But let him come back to New Jersey. Let him change his legacy. Do you remember when Scott Gomez came back to New Jersey and how much we loved him? Do you remember when Bobby Holik came back to New Jersey and how much we loved him? Bobby Holik had a rough year that year, but we loved seeing him back in the number 6. Was he wearing 16 that year? I think he was wearing 16.
I think so, yeah.
Year.
Or Brendan Shanahan.
Coming back for that one season was a ton of fun. It doesn't matter how singed the bridge is on your way out. If you come back home, I know Minnesota's home for him, but I'm sorry, we drafted you. We turned you into a star. You are our captain. Come back home, Zach. I'm all for this. I know he's 36 years old. I know
I have a differing opinion on it. I'd say no, but because
bring him back. Don't listen to Sam. Bring him back.
But because Vinny Parise, no relations, right? Did we ever find out if they're related?
He tells me there's no relation, but there are liars out there.
Well, I know because to be honest with you, I think Vinny and Zach look alike. Just they play their game different. Yeah, like Zach, he's a great ice hockey player. Vinny, he's a great ice hockey blogger and amongst all sports. But yeah, Thomas writes back, an aspiring data scientist here to hear you boys break it down. Thank you. I don't know much about this analytics stuff. I'm a little bit kind of old school, but I'm open-minded. I'm not closed-minded. Sometimes I like to hear about that stuff, but I'll tell you what, Will Scouch got me excited about William Eklund at number 4. I'm a defense first guy, but I'll tell you what, if they go offense at 4th overall, and who's that other guy that you were talking about? I couldn't pronounce his name. You couldn't pronounce his name, and now I forgot how to pronounce his name. If he actually falls down to number 28, I don't know. I forgot what his name was. I'll tell you what. If they go offensive, there is a potential with all Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz. They would be not just top heavy. Their entire forward set could be extremely heavy. You could roll 4 first lines. If they just keep drafting forwards like at the rate they are, potentially. You think about the center position, Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, and then Dawson Mercer down the middle. And then you arm them with wingers and you get a free agent somewhere, what happens if 2 years, 3 years down the line, Kucherov is suddenly available as trade bait?
I heard you say that on the podcast on Sunday. What are you talking about, Kucherov? The more realistic option is Stamkos, but we don't need Stamkos. That's not the right fit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he's a center. He's best at center. I don't want Hughes on the wing. I don't want that. I know he's terrible at faceoffs last year. He'll get better. That's the least of my worries. The least of my worries. He got sick. He lost a lot of his size and a little bit of the reaction time. He'll be fine. So I don't want the center. There's a lot of people on the Lightning I take, but they're just in a weird spot. They're in a weird spot, straight up. So you don't want Parise. You're not a big fan of the reunion?
I think Zach Parise needs to go to a win-now team. I don't think he would pick New Jersey as a win-now. He's at the age right now.
Hear me out.
Okay.
If Zach Parise comes to New Jersey, then he knows which teams are the win-now teams, and we could trade him there. So he guarantees himself to be on a win-now team. He spends half the season in New Jersey. He repairs his image in the one place where he dominated, the one place where he went to the Stanley Cup final. He didn't get past they didn't get past the second round, right? Minnesota with him. They
didn't go far.
So maybe they made one conference final, but they never made it past that. So the furthest he'd been is in a Devils uniform. That run is still some people's favorite run, and mine included. We was close a little bit older, and I remember it better than the 95, 2000, 2003 runs. I remember those runs, though. But that 2012 run, watching every single game, whether it was in my mom's basement, at the Toms River Applebee's, at the Brick Township Buffalo Wild Wings, or in the Prudential Center itself. That run, just so many memories from that run. I actually was a poor college kid, right, in West Virginia University when we finally saw Parise return to the Prudential Center. And if I'm not mistaken, it was 2 years later, right? Because the lockout took out so the lockout took out that return of Parise to the New Jersey. 2 years later, spent more money than I had to buy tickets to go boo Zach Parise. I literally did it. I am one of those people that drove 6 hours, spent more money than I had, just to be in the cheap seats by myself, I think. Maybe my cousin was with me. I don't remember. But I went. I made sure I was there. I was booing him every time he touched the puck. I still boo him every time he touches the puck. Come back home, Zach. You made a mistake. We are here to forgive you. Come back home, Zach. Come back home.
I don't think he's coming back, but
for the
right price, one year.
Who cares about the price? And we got all the money in the world. We had to hit the cap floor. Give him $10 million. I don't care.
I don't want Parise. I don't want Parise.
No, you shouldn't give him $10 million. I'm being facetious. People think I'm serious when I say that sometimes. So I have to watch. I don't give Parise $10 million. But
do you think he would go to Boston? Do you think he'd go to Boston?
I think he's going to go someplace weird. Everybody's just pegging him for New York. I don't think New York can fit what others will give him. Like somebody's gonna give him $2 million. I think, or he might go like a no tax state. Maybe he goes to Dallas. Maybe he goes. I think he stays in America. I don't think he goes to Canada just because of the weirdness of the border and everything right now. But
would he go to Tampa for minimum salary?
he might. That's definitely one that he would probably consider. Like think about how much difference in salary $1 million is in Tampa than $2 million is on Long Island. You know, I'm not a tax expert, but state taxes, I think it's at like what 9 or 10%, something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, he's gonna lose $200,000 playing in New York. So he's really only losing, you know, and then take home, when you think about federal taxes on the highest tax bracket, he's only going to lose like $400,000 cash. That's a lot of money. But, you know, when you're a millionaire like Zach Parise is, it's, you know, you pick happiness over a price like that.
Oh, he definitely deserves it. I mean, he's earned his way to pick and choose where he wants to be. Steve Tarta's Rangers a better fit for Parise?
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that. I'm not letting you say that, Sam. Get out of here with that.
That's
the Rangers. The Rangers. Get out of here, Steve. I don't like your negativity. There's just a ton going on. Like there's Ted Brown, who's hired a new CEO. It's very clear, and I wrote this, Sam, and I'm sure you're going to kind of get into this. It's very clear that was a basketball move. And
of course it was.
Honestly, HBSC needs a basketball guy. They want a new arena for the Sixers. They're going to trade Ben Simmons. I think there's some kind of weird hostile takeover going on with Crystal Palace. They need a money guy who knows basketball, and they need a guy who's going to go look at locations. Like what he needs to do for the Devils comes in 3 or 4 years. You know, the MSG deal expiring, what to do with the new money that's coming in from ESPN and TNT deals. Things like that is like sixth on his agenda. And it's not because the owners don't care about hockey. It's because the owners have much bigger fish to fry in basketball and like the Devils are like the good child. You know what I mean? Like their arena makes them stupid amounts of money with concerts, and it's in great shape. They don't need an upgrade. They don't need to change locations. It's right next to the train station. They're in really good shape with the Prudential Center. The team, it's not a wash. Their star players are very good, at least. They don't need to make major changes. They need to add. And that's not as hard as it is to subtract.
I'll tell you what. There could be a lot of money made here for Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment if indeed there's going to be an RSN for both the 76ers and the Devils, being the only New Jersey affiliate RSN whatever that is purely New Jersey, which would make it technically, I believe, would it be? I think it may be the first, if you take Philadelphia's people and New York's people in New Jersey, it could be the largest sports market in the country. If you think of
New York is still much bigger. Much bigger.
If New York,
you got to remember New York.
Hold on, if that RSN is in New York and in Connecticut, and then you combine that with South Jersey and North Jersey and Philadelphia, that could potentially, if New Jersey, someone said to me a long time ago, if you want to, because you're a media guy, someone told me a long time ago that Trenton, the state capital, at one point was offering a free frequency to have an affiliate be solely New Jersey, but nobody took it. Just because it's got to be like, it is the biggest, it would be one of the biggest markets in the United States. Now, if you have an arena in Camden,
New Jersey one,
if you have an arena in Camden, you do the redevelopment there, and you do the, and obviously they're putting a huge investment in Newark, the $20 million investment that they did last year, right? They're doing all sorts of, charitable, business growth type work. You combine the two. Now, this Tad Brown has experience starting a sports network. He has experience selling a team at a record number in 2017, right? So I foresee the process of Tad Brown being, okay, get the arena, hopefully get two teams winning with an RSN, and then have a major parachute out 10 years from now.
Yeah. I mean, what is it, 2024 the MSG deal ends?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. That's still the worst signing that Lou's ever made. I don't know if that was Lou or Vanderbeek, but
worst signing it was definitely Vanderbeek, because from what I was told,
he just wanted the money.
That deal,
he was desperate.
He needed the down payment to move the team out of the dump to Newark. And at that time,
at least that's part of it.
And the economics at that time was, hey, you know what? That was at the biggest bubble of the housing market before it crashed. So I thank Jeff Vanderbeek for doing that, because he took one for the team literally. His finances were disarray, and then by the time they moved, the 2008 happened, and then everything that he had at his previous job, it's all well documented. I don't make this stuff up.
I've told you, I've tried very hard to get Vanderbeek on this podcast because I'm curious about his thoughts on everything and what he thinks of the Devils today, and I just want to hear him tell stories. But he's busy with the campaign and all that, so yada yada. Maybe one day we'll get him on. Keep trying on my LinkedIn
campaign. Is he running for something?
He's the chief financial officer for the Republican candidate for governor. Last time I checked.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I know things, Sam. I don't know how I run into these things. It's trying to find a guest for the podcast. I had to learn about them.
Hey, you know what? We'll have to get him on. I'll figure out a way.
So we got Tyler coming on in 15 minutes. The thing I really want to talk to Tyler about is the thing that's happening this week that we haven't mentioned yet. Sam, the expansion draft rosters are coming out.
Oh, yeah.
The protection lists are coming out on Friday.
I can't keep up with the deadlines because there's so many deadlines. There's all these procedures. It's like
Sam,
each day.
I have so much writing to do this month. I'm going to die. But I absolutely think that something weird's going to happen. I think either like an Andreas Janssen's going to be protected, or I know Tyler's going to talk about somebody interesting that's going to, light the fan base on fire that they could protect. And there might be some crazy trades. You mentioned I wrote the trade article yesterday because I think that it could come. I think these trades could come to roost this week. Some of the weird players that I think the one I really want is Thomas Hertl. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. He's only 27 years old. He's still really good. The Sharks are just in hell. They're in cap hell. They're in the standings hell. They're in production hell. They're just not good, and they spend a lot of money on the team. They need to figure something out. So if we give them a couple assets for Hertl, give him a shot for 1 year, see if we can re-sign him. I'm not talking about anything like Mercer or Holtz or Foote or anything because he's got 1 year left on his deal. But we can give him something interesting, and we'll go from there. You know what I mean? I would give up the 28th pick for Hertl to kind of give it a shot. I don't like that deal. I wouldn't prefer to. Yeah, it would hurt, especially after talking to Will, who just said that there's some really good players that are going to be there at 28 that can fill out the lineup. But I want to give Hertl a shot. I want to see what he can do.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like Scotty, although you probably heard me bitch every post game last season. I'm kind of like Scotty right now. Okay, you ripped off the Band-Aid with this organization. Don't put any more on. I'm thinking. I'm not saying Hertl is a bad player, but that Parisi talk we did before. Look, I've moved on from Parisi, and by the way, $20 says that. If indeed Tom Fitzgerald is in negotiations with Zach Parisi, it'll take him forever to make a decision. like last time.
Yeah, he takes an extra 3 days while the whole world is waiting for his decision on July 1st. Bob McKenzie's like, I want to go on vacation, you American swine, please make a decision. I want to be Bobby Margarita. Why are you waiting? Yeah, no, that was. Do you know? I think I found out. I remember I was in the car when I found out. I didn't even know what Twitter was, or maybe I knew what it was, but I didn't have one. I definitely didn't have a Twitter account at the time. But I think I was delivering pizzas for Domino's. No, that's not true because I was with my wife and I didn't work for Domino's then. So I was just driving in Tom's River. I was at the light right by the Tom's River Diner on 37. You go behind the diner, you make a left at the 7-Eleven, and you go up to the light. And that's where I found out that Zach Parise was signed with the Minnesota Wild. I was very big mad. And do you know what made me the only thing that actually made me mad about that, Sam?
What's that?
Is that we found out that he was texting Suter during the playoffs about it. You're on a Stanley Cup run. You're texting a guy about free agency. I wasn't a fan of that aspect. He can do whatever he wants. You know, he signed a 1-year deal. We knew it was a possibility that he was going to leave after that 1-year deal. But to text your guy about about free agency while you're trying to win a Stanley Cup for the first time in your career, that's the only thing that put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm over and done with Parise. He's old news, you know.
Right.
Okay, he took us to one cup final, big whoop. All right,
that was not big whoop. We took down the Rangers in overtime and ruined their Cinderella story. We took out the Flyers in unceremonious fashion when they were the favorites to win the cup. We ruined basically Brizgalov's career. You know, won Game 7 in double overtime against the Panthers after winning Game 6 in overtime. Returning Travis Zajac.
Don't forget Lauren Rubino, the Devils fan that gets in a Twitter war with the Florida Panthers owner. That was classic.
Oh, that was pretty great. I do remember that.
That was so unbelievably funny. And then she went to what, from 40 Twitter followers to almost like 10,000 overnight.
Yeah, that was early. That was early Twitter, so things would like explode like that.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was so funny. It's like, well, you only have 44 Twitter followers. Nobody cares what you think. I forgot what he said, but and then they try to make peace and all that. But as a nice gesture, he brings her over to Game 7, and she saw her Devils, Henrique. It was Henrique, right? You know,
it was Henrique,
yeah. And remember that meme where all those Florida Panthers execs were like this?
Yeah.
That was amazing. And I think
be still my heart.
I mean, 2001 was very disappointing. But 2012 was kind of like that last Marty Brodeur hurrah.
Yeah.
That, you know, we knew, look, he turned 40 in the middle of the playoffs. You know, we had a Marty party, at the Prudential Center. It was a good time. But that Game 6 was probably the loudest game I've ever been to for a New Jersey Devils game in Prudential Center from start to finish. It was nonstop. The Henrik chants were so loud where I couldn't even hear the person next to me if they wanted to say something because it was ringing in my ears.
No, that's the thing, is that we get a lot of flack for being Devils fans and the quote-unquote lack of a fan base, but the passion among these people is undeniable. It reminds me a lot of like how people love the Nashville fans because they're passionate and yada yada, but Nashville doesn't have a huge fan base. It's the same thing with the Devils. We just are, in the same media market as the Rangers and the Islanders, who have it's just physical time that they've existed. I know a ton of young Devils fans, and you're going to get a ton more, Sam. Get the bandwagon ready. it's real easy to get the horse and buggy going when nobody's on the bandwagon. But now that we got Hughes and Nico, two extremely marketable stars, and if they get Luke Hughes, you got the brother connection. There's going to be a reason. And with this ESPN deal, there's going to be new fans every day. And they're going to want a rooting interest. And the Devils give them a reason to have a rooting interest. PK Subban is a reason to have a rooting interest. I know a lot of people don't like him on the team, but he just straight up is a reason for people to root for the Devils. And the ownership is going to like that. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with that. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with everything. I'm excited to see this list, this expansion draft protection list, because it seems like not a ton. Like it seems like there's not a lot of room to move. It's like, you got to pick between protecting Yanni Kuokkanen and Michael McLeod, or Kuokkanen and Bastian, or Kuokkanen and Johnson. That seems to be the decisions, but maybe not. Maybe that's not what they decide. Maybe you think it's obvious to leave Subban's $9 million exposed, but maybe they don't. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot.
I will, for all the crap I took for making one little idea suggestion about Severson, I'd laugh so hard if he was actually on the unprotected list.
That would be dumb, but that would be very dumb. Very dumb. But
yeah,
dumb things have happened in the past, Sam. And then they got Siegenthaler. They just signed him. You would think that he's not, he's going to get protected. They just gave a third-round pickup for him. So, but who knows? There's a lot.
Colton White just got re-signed, 2-way contract, I believe.
I don't think they're protecting Colton White. Rachel Dory, friend of the podcast, she says that she thinks that he could be something. And I've trusted her opinion on things before, but she told me that she thinks that Colton White could be a good player.
Based on analytics or her gut instincts?
I think it's her gut. I think this one's her gut. I think she just likes the way he plays. She likes what he brings to the table. So I trust her on a lot of these things. She's been right a lot of times when she talks to me about these things. So I think that's something to watch. Josh Jacobs is one I'm curious what they do. Are they just going to cut bait on the former second-round pick? Because they can, right? He's like a G6 or a U6 or something free agent, that weird free agent where he's in the age range but hasn't played enough games. Something weird. But he can go sign with any team this offseason. I wonder what he's going to do. I wonder if the Devils are done with him, because he looked really good in training camp and then didn't really do anything during the season. So,
yeah. Well, I should probably get our next guest, right? Is it about time?
Yeah. You can call Tyler. Tyler is flexible. Tyler Kelly hasn't been on in a while. He's now I call him the Pucks and Pitchforks social ambassador, because I just use his tweets and claim them as mine.
Okay.
Because he's been moving around, so that's what I call him, the Pucks and Pitchforks social ambassador. But he's a big analytics guy. He's the guy who really started to get me into analytics. I was like, hey, just he's like, this is the way to kind of look at sets, and this is when he started like 3 years ago with me. I think it was 3 years ago. And that's when I was like, so plus minus isn't exciting anymore? And he's like, no, please stop using that. I'm like, okay. So, yeah. But, yeah, no, go get Tyler. We're going to talk expansion draft. We're going to talk offseason. We're going to talk trades. We're going to talk free agency, whether free agency matters. Matt Jr. says, White is another left-hand D. The Devils have so many left-hand D prospects. They need right-hand D. It all depends on how you look at Severson. If you think Severson's going to be here for another 8 years, I don't think they're in that bad a shape with right-hand D. Is Walsh right-handed? I always that one. I'm trying to remember what handed he. Yeah, so Riley Walsh is right-handed, so he's a right-hand D prospect. He's somebody who could be something. He's definitely an NHL caliber prospect. You got Subban, obviously. They need a top line right-hand D. They need to sign Dougie Hamilton. Just do it. Just sign Dougie Hamilton. It makes sense. It doesn't in one side of my mouth, but it does in the other. Because Dougie Hamilton, a top right-hand D, he's projected to be really good for the entirety of a 7-year contract. He's still young enough. He has the kind of skill set that doesn't fall off, barring injury. Like, Subban should have still been good at this point, but he just got hurt. Back injuries really do a number on you. If Dougie Hamilton could avoid that, then the Devils will be in good shape. So I think that the Hamilton signing does make sense. We have the money. We have we wouldn't have to give up assets to do it. I don't know if it makes sense for Hamilton. I don't know if he's going to want to sign here. But maybe he just wants the money. And that's okay. I'm cool with that. Zach Greinke only wanted the money. He said so. He said the Dodgers gave him the most money. And Zach Greinke is still in this league, playing really well. It's just because a player wants the money doesn't mean it's going to impact their performance once they get the money. There's ego involved in this, and they still want to be one of the best. And Dougie Hamilton's right on that cusp. He's right there of top defenseman. So I do think that he's going to. I think it does make sense for the Devils to go after him. But Sam, you're back.
I'm back. I'm back with our good old friend of the podcast, Tyler Kelly. He's a Pucks and Pitchforks blog. What is he now? An ambassador?
He's a social ambassador.
Oh, okay. You can find him on Twitter at DocKelly41. Tyler, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. How are you guys? What's up, Sam? What's up, Nick? It's good to be back.
Welcome back. I think the last time I had you on, I had the worst iteration of the game that I ever did, where I had the weakest link, and I asked a bunch of very obscure questions back to back. So, figured a year later we should probably have you back on, and we'll just talk a little hockey.
Yeah, sounds good to me. That didn't go well for me last time. So
some of those games are like some of my creative genius, and some of those games are just I need to throw them out and never look at them again. But Tyler, I was talking with the Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Twitter Live about Dougie Hamilton, and I think it does make sense for the Devils to give him the contract. All the analytics I see Dom's model that has him still projected to be a high contributor 7 years from now. What are your thoughts on the top defenseman on the market?
Oh, it's Dougie, and no doubt, and I'm all in on Dougie Hamilton. I think I've been pretty vocal about that. I'd throw an absurd amount of money at him, especially for the Devils with Subban maybe coming off the books this year. In the expansion draft, we'll find out shortly, I guess, and maybe coming off the books. If not coming off the books next year. So you're talking about freeing up $9 million in cap space, and where's that going to go? Why not give Dougie Hamilton a $10 million plus contract to convince him to come to New Jersey when he's one of the best defensemen in the league, and yet he's going to be good for. Maybe not all 7 years of the contract, but if you get 5 good years out of Dougie right now with Nico and Jack coming into their own, it makes a ton of sense.
And so Jerry just asked in the comment section, who plays with Hamilton? He needs a true stay-at-home to play with him. I don't know if that's true. Do you think that Ty Smith would be able to play with Dougie Hamilton?
I don't know that I would play Ty Smith with Dougie, but I don't think that the Devils are going to have a tough time finding somebody to play with him. For example, if they re-sign Ryan Murray, boom, there's Dougie.
I was going to say that, yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
If Siegenthaler, if they want to give him a shot, we don't know what he can or can't do. But I don't. He's going to make whoever he plays with better. So he did benefit from. I think he played with Gio in Calgary a lot. He played with Giordano, but he's played with a few different partners in Carolina, and so I wouldn't stress too much about who his partner is going to be. Especially, if they re-sign Ryan Murray, that's your answer right there, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's going to cost that much to re-sign Ryan Murray. There's just a lot of things going on that I don't think anybody's going to throw a massive contract at Ryan Murray. So I do think that he can get re-signed, and then you got a decent unit next year. You know, you kind of it would be weird if they sign Dougie Hamilton and Seattle doesn't take Subban, because then you got Subban, Severson, and Hamilton on the right side. I guess you could play. Why couldn't you play Subban third pairing 5v5 minutes? Right, that wouldn't be that bad.
No, I mean, and if you're if next year, assuming that the Devils, sign Dougie and keep Subban, which they have the money to do, if Dougie's your first pair righty and then Severson's your second pair, and then you have Subban as your third pair, or I mean, you could whoever you play more. Maybe you play Subban more one night and you play Severson more one night. You go back and forth. But if those are your three right defensemen, even with Subban where he's at in his game right now, that is a great trio of right shot defensemen.
Yeah, Subban comes with a lot of flaws. That much is obvious now. A lot of them seem to have to do with movement, and I would just attribute it to the back injury. But when it comes to Severson, if you have him as your second right-hand D, I mean, there's not a lot of better second-line right-hand defenseman in the league. As much as we get frustrated by his mistakes, what he brings to the table is undeniable, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Severson guy too, and I know we get caught up on the mistakes here and there, but he is a very, very underrated player. I mean, he really has been the Devils' best defenseman almost basically his entire tenure in New Jersey. I mean, he's a solid defenseman. He does make some glaring mistakes, but I mean, everybody does, and his defensive play has really improved the past 2 years. So I'm a huge Severson guy, and I'd be okay with Subban as a third pairing guy too. That really is that would be some nice depth for the Devils to have, which isn't something they've had defensively in a long time.
Yeah, I think that they just need that top line guy. That's what they've been looking for this whole time. He's there for free. I mean, not free. He costs money, but doesn't cost assets. You get to keep all of your, one of the top prospect pools. So it just makes sense. I do want to shift gears, though. You mentioned Subban, the expansion draft. That list comes out, I believe, Friday. I think that you have some surprises that you think are going to happen when it comes to who they're going to protect, or are you saying why don't you tell me who you think that they're going to protect and where you think that they're going to make a mistake and who you would protect?
Okay. So I think they're going to protect I think they'll go 7-3-1, obviously. So 7 forwards, 3 defensemen. And one goalie. Right off the bat, they're obviously protecting Mackenzie Blackwood. That's everybody knows that. Done. Goalie's done. Defensemen, I'm not 100%. What I think they're going to do at this point is I actually think that they're going to protect Subban, Severson, and Siegenthaler. That's what I think they're going to do, and what I think they should do. And obviously, there's still time. I think they should get Murray under contract, and then they should protect Murray, Severson, and Butcher.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think Siegenthaler is one where I don't see a need to protect him. I don't think Seattle's going to take him. It doesn't. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. And the Devils just traded for him, so it wouldn't shock me if they protected him over someone like Butcher. But for me, there's no reason to protect Subban at all. And if you protect him, what's the point? Like, if Seattle wants to take him and his $9 million cap hit, they can have it. He's only got 1 year left, so what's the point? Severson, obviously, if they didn't protect Severson, Seattle would take him in a second. And I think it's the same with Butcher. I know the fan base is really soured on Butcher after his rookie year, but he's still a very good player, especially in a third pair role. So I think that would be like my three. If they re-sign Murray, it would be Murray, Severson, Butcher. If they don't re-sign Murray and he hits free agency, then I think I'd go Severson, Butcher, Siegenthaler. And I'm still leaving Subban exposed. For forwards, obviously Nico, Andreas Johnson, obviously being protected. Miles Wood, they're going to protect. Jesper Bratt. I think they'll protect Zaka, Kolkinen, and Sharon Govich as well, and that ends up leaving like the best exposed forward is arguably Michael McLeod. So I mean, that if I'm Seattle, I don't even know who I'm taking in this scenario. I maybe like somebody like Merkley, throw him in the bottom six. I don't know. Fortunately for the Devils, there's not a ton of talent to expose. I guess it's fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Devils are prime candidate to lose a young forward just because when you do the math, Seattle's got to come out with 30 players, and they can only put a 23-man roster. So I think that there's value in getting a guy who can go to the AHL for 1 year. And I think Merkley is that guy. I think Merkley might be the pick. When I look at all the options, McLeod would be an interesting one for them just because former first-round pick, someone who really showed something last year. And then Bastian brings the size, and I don't know how Ron Francis is going to look at that or, if he's going to be enamored with that. But I think the pick is going to be a forward because I think there's going to be enough defensemen out there. Like, I think they're going to get Ryan Graves from Colorado. I think they can get, Mark Giordano from Calgary. And there's a couple other options for Seattle as far as defensemen around the league because there's just not enough protection slots for these people to, are you going to expose 3 more forwards to protect 1 more defenseman? And I don't think that these teams are going to make that decision. So I think there's going to be some good defensemen, and I think they're going to go forward.
I think there's only like one team where you might see them actually protect 4 defensemen, and I think that's Nashville. And even that, like, they could protect 4 defensemen. They could justify it. Pretty much everybody else in the NHL is just going to protect 3.
So the only place where I disagree, Tyler, is Colorado, because they have Makar, Taze. Oh wait, maybe that's not true anymore because Johnson waived his no move clause. Because
Johnson waived his no move clause. I think it's Gerard, Taze, and Makar being protected in Colorado, and I don't imagine they're going to protect Eric Johnson at this point.
No, the other, I would protect Graves over Johnson.
Yeah, and still, I think they'd be content losing Graves over not being able to protect, somebody like Burakovsky or Kadri or. I mean, I guess maybe because it really comes down to because they're obviously going to protect Rantanen, obviously. Oh, and maybe who knows because they don't have to protect Landeskog anymore, or so we think. So maybe they're okay exposing a Burakovsky or a Kadri, but I'd be shocked if they were. So,
do you think that maybe a team like Colorado? I thought Colorado was a team that made a lot of sense to target. I thought Graves would be a good player to target just because of how good he was on the penalty kill. But is there a team that you like to target in the next couple of days before these expansion lists come out?
Yes. I think Minnesota is my favorite right now, especially because of what they just did buying out Suter and Precy. So to me, that signals they're about to go into a very, very deep rebuild. And they just extended Brodin and Spurgeon and Dumba's a free agent in 2023. So Jonas Brodin is like my number 1 trade target, and he has a full no movement clause. So if he doesn't want to come to New Jersey, if he doesn't want to leave Minnesota, he's not leaving Minnesota. But if they're truly entering a full-on rebuild, that is a team that I'm calling.
Yeah, I mean, Brodin, that would be a great player to get. I would love that move, but like you said, the no movement clause, it's hard to tell where people see New Jersey right now because obviously they've been bad for a while, but their team is like 23 years old is the average age. It's like something insane like that. So there's a reason to want to come here because the future might be bright. But yeah, I mean, Minnesota's weird. What do you think of it just came out during the podcast that the Devils are tied for the favorites to get Parise with the Islanders. So are you want anything to do with that deal?
I mean, no. Like, I don't see a point. Like, if the Devils want to bring in a veteran, there's plenty of other directions they can go that I think would benefit the team more. If they're looking to replace that Zajac role, you can go right back to Minnesota and maybe you're signing Nick Bonino. But I don't see the. I don't know, man. I can't see Parise coming back to New Jersey. He just seems ridiculous at this point.
It's fair. I just thought he was the favorite. I wasn't even gonna think about it. Then I saw the odds came out from OddsShark, and the Devils are the favorites, and I was like, okay, that's. And then Matt Fronenberger said Saad is better than Parise, which I think is pretty obvious. So let's turn to that. We talked a little bit about Hamilton and free agency. There are some interesting names in free agency. Brandon Saad being one of them. There's from big risks to no money, throw somebody at like a Josh Ho-Sang. Who are you here for trying to like sign somebody in free agency? I mean, the Devils need to hit the cap floor, so I think they have to sign one or two people in free agency just by pure numbers. But what is your philosophy on free agency in general, and do you see anybody that you like this year outside of Hamilton?
Yeah, so we already talked about Hamilton, and that's an obvious one. Jaden Schwartz is somebody that I really like. I've liked his game for a while. He went to Colorado College, and I lived in Colorado Springs for a while, so that kind of drew me to his game in the NHL, and he's been really good for a long time. He's been a big part of St. Louis's success over the last few years, and he's kind of getting up there in age. He's 29. But I am a big fan of Jaden Schwartz. Thomas Tatar, he was sitting in the press box for Montreal in the playoffs, and he's still a great player. So that's two wings. And again, like, I don't think the Devils need to go out and get themselves a center. If they do, like I said before, Nick Bonino, if they want to get a nice third line depth center, then I think that's a direction I could see them going. Somebody like Nick Bonino. I'd love to see them bring somebody like Adam Larson home, bring him home as a free agent, and
bring everyone home.
Well, for me, like I'd much rather see Larson come back to New Jersey than Parise. At least Larson's he's 28 years old, and he plays a nice stay-at-home defensive game. That'd be a good one to see. But really, like, there isn't a ton I love in free agency. But if I am going to sign somebody, it's going to be trying to get a value deal with somebody like Schwartz, or maybe Tatar. I mean, Tatar spent the Stanley Cup playoffs. Well, not the entire playoffs, but he spent the finals in the press box. So how much value is he going to have in free agency? I don't know, but he's still a really talented player. So he's definitely somebody that I would be looking at if I was the Devils.
Yeah, and the Montreal made a lot of weird decisions, like Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Wow, that was terrible. But you know what I mean. They put him in the press box after he was, one of their better scorers on the ice. So I don't know what Montreal was doing, but yeah, I love the value of Tatar, and I've always liked his value until was it Montreal traded like 3 picks for him one year? That was the Vegas to.
I think, well, yeah, he went Detroit to Vegas, and that was a big trade. And then he went to Montreal as part of the Pacioretty deal. But when Vegas traded for him, it was like a huge package. It was like a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and like a third-round pick, I think. Which was like
wild.
At the time, I thought that was a lot for Tomas Tatar. But he's still, I mean, he the last 3 years he's been an elite play driver. Like if you look at his underlying numbers, if you look at his charts on HockeyViz, his offense is through the roof, and his defensive game is really good too. So he's definitely somebody I'd be taking a hard look at.
So let's talk about the goalie position. You have a special interest in the goalie position. You wanted them to go all in on Robin Lehner last year. They didn't get the chance, but now it looks like they have the chance now. Elliot Friedman specifically said the Devils have been calling about Lehner and Fleury in Vegas. What are your thoughts about that possibility?
I mean, if it's coming down to Lehner versus Fleury, my preference is very clearly going to be Robin Lehner. I think he's familiar with the 1A, 1B situation. And the big thing for me with Lehner is we've seen him go from defensive system to defensive system to defensive system. He's bounced around a bunch, and he's had success everywhere he's gone. He went from the Islanders to Chicago, now Vegas, and everywhere he goes, he produces. He's a good goalie. He's a solid goalie. His contract's reasonable. He's 29. He signed through 2025. To me, that is that. If they can acquire Leonard, it's a no-brainer. But if I'm Vegas, there's no shot that I'm moving Leonard. I'm trying to move Fleury. And if I'm the Devils and I can get Fleury for cheap, he's only got 1 year left, $7 million. They can eat that salary. That's no big deal. And that's a nice little 1A, 1B scenario too. I'd be okay with 1 year of Marc-Andre Fleury. But yes, if they can get Leonard, go get him.
So there's a lot of other goalies on the market, trade and free agency. Let's say Vegas puts a Vezina Trophy winning price on Fleury, and it just doesn't work out. Which is the free agent that you're hoping comes here? I mean, they seemed to figure it out last year with Crawford. He was probably the best option for them. Obviously, it didn't work out for whatever reason. But you got Linus Ullmark on the free agency. You got Philip Grubauer. You got Tuukka Rask. You got Yaroslav Halak. I think Grice is on. You got Peter Mrazek. Drager is somebody who's been in the news from Florida. Where are you go? I mean, the Devils are going to get one of these guys. I think that's pretty obvious because they have one of the better opportunities out there. But who are you hoping they end up with?
So before I start talking about goalies, I just want to say I'm not giving any goalie more than 2 years in free agency. So that probably eliminates a few of these goalies because somebody like, David Riddick, who's now in Toronto, he's probably going to want a few more years. And I'm not really interested in him anyway, but that's just, he's 28 years old. So that was the first name. Like Linus Ullmark, he's probably going to want a 4, 5, 6 year deal. And I could see him getting a 5-year deal from somebody, but if I'm New Jersey, I'm not giving him a 5-year deal. So it depends on what direction the Devils really want to go, but the top of my list right now would probably be Antti Ranta, Philip Grubauer, and Halak. Those would be my top 3. I'd definitely be interested in Freddie Anderson, but Freddie Anderson would be 100% a 1 to 2 year deal, low cost, because he's been he's found some rough times, but he was very, very, very good. But I think Grubauer is probably going to be a little more expensive than I'd want. But if you can get somebody like Antti Ranta, he does have health concerns, but when he's played, he's been very, very good. So he's probably my number 1 right now, with Grubauer, cost considerations as my number 2, and then Halak is my 3.
So this is my last question for you, Tyler. What are your general thoughts in the offseason? What do you think the Devils are going to do? Are they going to, Scott O'Neill said on the podcast, on the Speak for the Devils podcast a couple of weeks ago, that the green light is there, and then he left. So it's very confusing about how aggressive the Devils are going to be, what they're going to try to do, whether they're going to try to go through free agency. I mean, they seem to be tied to everybody. They seem to be in all these rumors, and nothing's happened. So what do you think is going to happen this offseason with the Devils? What's your prediction?
It's it's tough to say because I don't want to say Fitz is at. I think we are at a crossroads right now, and I don't think it has anything to do with Fitz as the GM, but the team itself is at a crossroads, right? Nico's 22 and he's on his $7 million a year contract, and Jack is on the last year of his entry level deal. So this is the cheap deals are ending. Nico's not on one anymore. Jack's not going to be on one next year. So if they want to spend an insane amount of money, this is the year to load up on 1 or 2 year contracts and see if they can get away with it. But we know they're going to sign a goalie. That's a given. The question to me is, can they actually lure a big free agent? And I don't think they can. I don't think they're going to be able to get Dougie Hamilton here. So then it becomes, what are they going to be able to swing a big trade, and what are they going to trade in that scenario? So I think the Devils, we probably see a pretty typical pretty typical offseason. I think they'll probably end up signing somebody like Jake McCabe, maybe probably re-sign like a Ryan Murray, and then if we're lucky, maybe we get one of those top tier forwards that I listed, like one of my top targets. But I wouldn't expect them to land any big fish like Dougie Hamilton. That's not my expectation. Probably a few like one or two mid-tier moves, and then a couple more minor moves.
All right, Tyler Kelly. It was great having you back on. Just so you know, you can't see this. Oh, no, I have to ask you one more thing. Have you gotten Yingling in Texas yet?
I've gotten it out here. One time my parents came out for Thanksgiving and they drove it to me, but it has not reached me yet in liquor stores. So no.
So, okay. So the Yingling said they were going nationwide, and I know Tyler's been desperate for the amber taste of Yingling beer, but for your sake, I'm drinking my Florida Yingling today, and I'm enjoying it. So hopefully you can get some yourself soon. But
I think they said within 6 months. So within 6 months I should have it.
It's the long game, Tyler. It'll be worth it. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on. We'll have you on again soon.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys.
That is Tyler Kelly, Pucks and Pitchforks blog. What was it? Social ambassador?
Social media ambassador, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if they have Taylor Ham down in Texas. Yingling? Taylor Ham? I don't know. Nick, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry. I'm setting up future podcasts.
Oh, okay.
I'm always
I saw your head down on the monitor, and I was like, "Is he okay? Is he breathing?"
Listen, this has been a weird week as far as sleep. I think before today I got 4 hours of sleep in the middle of the day, but before that, I think I was totaling like 7 in 3 days. So I might drift off sometimes, but I brought my A game for the podcast.
You certainly have.
You kind of get up, but that's all I got. That's all I got.
Well,
I'll take some pork roll.
Actually, I just want to pat myself on the back because at 7:30, I'm like, I haven't seen this error message before. The software we use, the Windows updates, they happen. And I always say, don't do a Windows update before you do something like this, but of course I couldn't help myself. It needed to update. So it's like, all right, just update. And everything went haywire. So you know what I had to do? I had to backdate the update, and then it suddenly worked. So I'll have to figure that part out. But we made it on time,
I've had to do that before. We did.
Yeah,
we did.
We made it
I
on
had to tell
time.
the guests to be like, just be patient. I think we're going to make it. But everything was great. Will was great. Tyler was great.
Yeah.
And
Will was
it's
probably
funny.
doing some analysis on us. He's like, yeah, these guys are 4.5 minutes late every podcast.
Yeah, it's
lower our draft ranking.
Yeah, we're going in the third round now. Oh no. No, but it's been good. And then I got to thank the fans. I think we broke 300,000 last month. I think I talked about that last podcast. But we're already at 150,000 this month, so we're on pace to do it again. People are coming out. They like the articles we're writing. Sam's here. He's officially on board. I talked to Vinny during the podcast when I found out the odds were out. And I was like, Vinny, you got to talk about your boy Zach. He's going to talk about the Zach coming back to New Jersey. Garden State boy. Drafted and bred. Come add to your statistics. Come add to the legacy New Jersey. I don't want to boo Zach anymore. I want to cheer for Zach. So I hope he goes to New Jersey. Play him on the fourth line. Play him on the third or fourth line. Play him on the power play. We need somebody for that second unit power play. No more slingshot. Just get good players.
Also, on a serious note, let me turn down the music before I forget. We want to send our condolences to Sports Minded Unlimited. The owner, Brian, passed away, and I've been reading all the social media messages. He was a big part of the Devils community, so we just want to send our condolences and our sympathies to the family, because that's a big loss. And I've been reading all the social media messages. Brian, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but La Biof, I don't know. Sorry, but heard he was a great guy. I've heard many good things about him and his family. So our condolences to them. So just wanted to get that in there.
No, absolutely. I mean, Sports Minded is one of the biggest parts of the Devils community.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's like so many reasons to try to be, even like the hockey store where they try to get Rangers players and Islanders players. I'm sure they try and they do, but they're very firmly a Devils store. And, I've been there. I met Henrique there. So that was fun. And I actually told him that I was going to cover him one day. And I guess that's kind of true. So that's kind of fun. But most Devils fans in New Jersey have a memory of Sports Minded. And to hear he passed away is, it sucks.
Devastating.
I don't mean to laugh.
Can't imagine.
It's just I've know so many people who are going through losses over and over again. It just seems like it's this past year and a half, on top of everything else we're dealing with, everybody seems to be dealing with a loss or two. So it stinks to hear our friends over there at Sports Minded are dealing with that. So prayers up to them. The podcast is here for whatever you need. pucksandpitchforks.com is here for whatever you need. So, reach out if you need to.
Yep. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening, watching. We'll drop the podcast at midnight. Till next time, let's go Devils.